My Harvard MBA daughter-in-law was slowly killing me for $50 million. I'm Thomas Mitchell, and for 3 months I'd been dying slowly. What started as concern for my health after my wife's death became a calculated plan to steal my life's work. Victoria thought she was smarter than a 58-year-old widower grieving his wife of 30 years. She had an MBA from Harvard, a corner office at my company, and access to my entire fortune. What she didn't have was patience. At Silicon Valley's biggest charity gala, with 200 industry leaders watching live, she learned that experience always beats ambition. One switched cocktail exposed months of pharmaceutical manipulation and a scheme to steal my $50 million AI empire. The blood tests don't lie, neither do the bank records. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, 3 months after I buried my wife, Margaret. March was when everything started falling apart. Margaret's funeral had been beautiful. Over 300 people came to pay respects. She'd been the heart of our family, the bridge between me and our son Derek. Without her, I felt lost in my own home. Victoria stepped in immediately. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone right now," she said, moving into our guest wing with enough luggage for a permanent stay. Derek was traveling constantly for his consulting work, always another client emergency in another city. Looking back, those trips became suspiciously frequent after Margaret died. The first sign I was being underestimated came during a board meeting in April. I'd built Quantum Mind AI from nothing started in my garage in 2003, grew it to a $50 million Series C company with contracts at Apple and Google. But that Tuesday morning, I couldn't remember the quarterly revenue numbers. "Thomas seems tired," Victoria whispered to Marcus Thompson, my business partner of 30 years. "Maybe I should handle the financial review?" The second sign happened 2 weeks later. I'd always prided myself on my memory could recite patent numbers, code specifications, entire presentations. But during a video call with Tesla's procurement team, I blanked completely. The words just weren't there. Victoria was right there with a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Why don't you let me take this one?" "You've been working so hard since Margaret." Her voice trailed off with perfect sympathy. The Tesla team looked uncomfortable. These were people who'd known me for 15 years, who'd watched me present breakthrough algorithms at conferences. Now they were seeing me fumble basic concepts. After the call, Victoria sat me down in my home office. "Dad, I'm worried about you. These memory issues, the confusion, it's probably grief, but we should be careful. Dr. Williams mentioned that stress can affect cognitive function. That's when she introduced the medication routine. These are just supplements," she explained, laying out a 7-day pill organizer on my kitchen counter. Omega-3 for brain health, B-complex for energy, melatonin for sleep. Dr. Williams thought they might help. The pills were small, innocuous. White tablets, blue capsules, tiny yellow ovals. Victoria had labels for everything, written in her precise handwriting. She even had a chart on the refrigerator. Morning pills, evening pills, bedtime pills. "I don't want to be a burden," I told her. "You're not a burden, Dad. You're family. This is what family does. But family doesn't usually take over your medication schedule completely. Family doesn't insist on handling your doctor appointments. And family definitely doesn't start suggesting that maybe you should step back from day-to-day operations at the company you built." The symptoms got worse. Some mornings I'd wake up groggy, like I'd been drugged. Other days I'd feel sharp until evening, then suddenly exhausted. My handwriting became shaky. My voice would slur slightly during late afternoon calls. Victoria documented everything. "I think we need to consider that this might be more than grief," she told Marcus during what she thought was a private conversation. I heard them through my office door. The confusion, the motor issues, maybe early onset dementia runs in his family? She was building a case. Medical records showing cognitive decline. Missed meetings blamed on my condition. Key decisions delayed because Thomas isn't feeling well today. The cruel genius was how she did it with such apparent love. Every morning, Victoria would bring me coffee and my pills. "How are you feeling today, Dad? Any better?" Her concern seemed genuine. Her smile was perfect. But I started noticing things. The pills she gave me didn't match the bottles in the medicine cabinet. The dosages on her handwritten labels were different from the pharmacy instructions. And most telling on days when I forgot to take the morning pills, I felt completely normal. 3 months into this routine, I was barely functional half the time. Victoria had effectively taken control of Quantum Mind's daily operations. She'd moved her office next to mine, started attending meetings I was too tired for, began making decisions about contracts worth millions. That's when Elena Rodriguez slipped me the note that changed everything. The note came on a Tuesday morning at Le Bernardin SF, where I'd been meeting potential investors for our Series D funding round. I'd chosen the restaurant carefully expensive enough to impress, quiet enough for serious conversation. The $850 tasting menu commanded respect. Elena Rodriguez had been working there for 23 years. I'd watched her serve everyone from tech CEOs to foreign dignitaries. She was professional, invisible, perfect at her job, which is why it was so unusual when she pressed a folded napkin into my hand while refilling my water glass. "Read this in private, Mr. Mitchell," she whispered. "I've been watching." The note was brief. "Your daughter-in-law puts something in your drink every time you're here. Today she did it again while you were in the bathroom. I switched your glasses. Be careful." My blood went cold. Victoria had insisted on joining me for this investor meeting, claiming she needed to understand the bigger picture of our financing strategy. She'd ordered our drinks while I'd stepped away to take a call from our patent attorney. I looked across the table at Victoria, who was charming 3 venture capitalists with her Harvard MBA polish and insider knowledge of our AI algorithms. Knowledge she'd gained by sitting in on meetings I was allegedly too confused to handle alone. The stakes crystallized in that moment. If I stayed silent, if I kept pretending everything was normal, I would lose everything Margaret and I had built together. Quantum Mind A. I wasn't just a company, it was our legacy. We'd mortgaged our house twice in the early years, lived on ramen and determination while I coded 16-hour days. Margaret had managed our books, handled investor relations, kept us afloat when revenue was inconsistent. The $50 million valuation represented 20 years of sacrifice. But the corporate structure meant everything. I still held 51% of voting shares, a decision Margaret and I had made to prevent hostile takeovers. The board had 7 members, me, Marcus Thompson, 3 external advisors, and 2 investor representatives. As long as I was deemed competent, I controlled the company's future. Victoria's role as VP of Strategy carried a $280,000 salary and significant decision-making authority. But more importantly, she'd positioned herself as my heir apparent. If something happened to my mental capacity, if I were declared incompetent, the board would likely name her interim CEO while Derek inherited my shares. The financial forensics were already concerning. I discovered $340,000 in unauthorized transfers over the past 2 months. Victoria had explanations, emergency facility upgrades, critical software licenses, legal fees for patent protection. Each transaction had been approved during meetings I'd allegedly missed due to my condition. But the real danger was the competency hearing she'd been quietly orchestrating. I'd found emails on her laptop correspondence with medical professionals about age-related cognitive decline and the need for family intervention. She'd scheduled appointments with neurologists, psychiatrists, geriatric specialists, all without my knowledge. The investors at lunch that day were crucial. Bayview Capital was offering to lead a $75 million Series D round, which would dilute my ownership to 43%. Below controlling interest. If the funding went through and I were subsequently declared incompetent, Victoria would effectively control Quantum Mind through board manipulation. I watched her presentation, noting how she'd memorized every detail of our proprietary algorithms, our market positioning, our competitive advantages. She spoke with authority about technical specifications I'd spent years developing. To these investors, she looked like the future of the company. I looked like the past. "Thomas has been such a mentor," Victoria told them, her voice perfectly modulated with respect and subtle concern. "His vision created this company, but he's been struggling lately. The stress of losing Margaret, the pressure of rapid growth, it's taken a toll." One of the investors nodded sympathetically. "Founder succession is always challenging. It's good he has family support during the transition." Transition. The word hung in the air like a threat. After the meeting, as we walked to the parking garage, Victoria was effusive. "I think that went perfectly, Dad. They're very interested. Bayview wants to move quickly. They're talking about closing the round within 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Enough time to complete her medical documentation, enough time for the competency evaluation she'd been planning, enough time to remove me from decision-making authority before the funding closed. That evening, I made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Dr. Sarah Williams, our family physician. Sarah, I need to ask you something confidential. Have you been prescribing medication for cognitive issues? Her pause was telling. Thomas, I haven't seen you in 4 months. Victoria called asking about supplements for memory support, but I never prescribed anything stronger than fish oil. The second call was to James Anderson, a private investigator Marcus had recommended years ago for corporate security issues. James, I need a background check and surveillance package. It's personal and it's urgent. When do you want me to start? Tonight. The confrontation came 3 days later in my home office. I'd spent the morning pretending to be confused, fumbling with emails while watching Victoria organize my schedule. She'd taken complete control of my calendar, canceling meetings she deemed too stressful, and rescheduling others with herself as primary attendee. Dad, we need to talk about your medication routine, I said, keeping my voice steady. Victoria looked up from her laptop, immediately alert. Of course. Are you feeling okay? You seem more focused today. That's the problem. I feel focused when I skip the pills. Her smile never wavered, but I caught the micro-expression, a tightening around her eyes. Grief affects everyone differently. Some days are better than others. Show me the pill bottles. What do you mean? The original bottles. From the pharmacy. I want to compare them to your labels. Victoria stood slowly, her posture shifting from concerned daughter-in-law to something more guarded. Dad, you're starting to worry me. This kind of paranoia. The bottles, Victoria. I threw them away after organizing the pills. It's more efficient this way. Lie number 1. Dr. Williams says she never prescribed these medications. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. She must have forgotten. You know how busy she is. Lie number 2. Elena Rodriguez at Le Bernardin saw you put something in my drink. The mask came off completely. Victoria's face went cold, calculating. Elena Rodriguez is a waitress, Dad. Are you really going to trust the word of service staff over your own family? There it was, the class superiority Victoria had been hiding beneath her concern. The entitled assumption that wealth and education made her inherently more credible than a woman who'd worked honestly for 23 years. What's in the pills, Victoria? Supplements. Exactly what I told you. Then you won't mind if I have them tested. Victoria moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Dad, listen to yourself. You're accusing me of poisoning you. That's delusional thinking. Maybe we should call Dr. Williams and schedule that neurological evaluation, the one you've been planning without telling me? Her eyes narrowed. You've been reading my emails. It's my house, my computer, my company. Your company? Victoria laughed, a sound without warmth. Dad, you can't remember quarterly revenue numbers. You blank out during client calls. You think a waitress is part of some conspiracy against you. When was the last time you contributed anything meaningful to Quantum Mind? The cruelty was breathtaking. This woman had been systematically drugging me, causing the very symptoms she now used as evidence of my incompetence. I built that company from nothing. 20 years ago. Technology changes. Leadership changes. Maybe it's time to accept that your best days are behind you. I walked to my desk drawer and pulled out a small recording device, a habit from years of documenting patent discussions. Victoria's face went white. How long has that been running? Long enough. She lunged for the recorder, but I was faster than she expected. For 3 months, she'd seen me as a declining old man. She'd forgotten I was also an engineer who'd solved problems for 4 decades. Give me that device, Thomas. No. You can't use that recording. I'm your family. Family doesn't drug family members for financial gain. Victoria straightened, her MBA training kicking in. You have no proof of financial gain. I've been caring for you, managing your affairs because you're clearly unable to. $340,000. The number hit her like a slap. What? $340,000 in unauthorized transfers over the past 2 months. All approved during meetings I allegedly missed. All documented. All traceable. Victoria's political mask was completely gone now. In its place stood someone I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, dangerous. Those were legitimate business expenses. For a Cayman Islands LLC that didn't exist 6 months ago, the silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear the gardener working on Margaret's rose bushes, normal life continuing while my family disintegrated. You can't prove anything, Victoria said finally. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to survive long enough to let the evidence speak. Thomas, you're making a serious mistake. I've been trying to help you, but if you're going to be paranoid and accusatory, then what? Victoria's smile was predatory. Then maybe it's time the board knew about your condition. About the recordings you're making of private family conversations. About the delusional accusations against people trying to help you. She pulled out her phone. I think Dr. Williams needs to hear about this episode, and Marcus should probably know that you're becoming unstable. I watched her dial, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Victoria thought she was threatening me with the nuclear option public disclosure of my alleged mental decline. What she didn't realize was that I'd been expecting this moment. Hello, Sarah. It's Victoria. I need to report a concerning incident with Thomas. As she spoke, describing my paranoid delusions and aggressive behavior, I opened my laptop and sent a single email to James Anderson. Phase 2. Begin surveillance documentation immediately. Victoria finished her call and smiled triumphantly. Dr. Williams is very concerned. She's recommending immediate psychiatric evaluation for your own safety. Of course she is. This could have been so much easier, Dad. All you had to do was step back gracefully. Enjoy your retirement. Let the next generation handle the complex decisions. The next generation being you. I have the qualifications, the vision, the energy you used to have. I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman I'd welcomed into our family, trusted with our secrets, supported through her MBA program. She'd repaid that trust by systematically poisoning me and stealing from the company Margaret and I had built together. Victoria, I want you to remember this conversation. Why? Because in 72 hours, you're going to wish you'd chosen differently. The next morning brought 2 unexpected visitors to my Atherton home. Victoria was in the shower when the doorbell rang at exactly 8:30 a.m. Through the security monitor, I recognized both faces immediately. Dr. Sarah Williams stood on my front porch holding a medical bag, her expression grave. Beside her was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, professional suit, the bearing of someone accustomed to difficult conversations. I opened the door before Victoria could intercede. Thomas, we need to talk, Dr. Williams said. This is Dr. Robert Chen from Stanford Neurology. Victoria called yesterday very concerned about your mental state. She described some troubling symptoms, Dr. Chen added. Paranoid ideation, memory issues, aggressive behavior toward family members. I invited them into my living room, noting how Dr. Chen immediately began observing my movements, my speech patterns, my eye contact. He was conducting an informal evaluation from the moment he entered my home. Victoria mentioned you've been making recordings of private conversations, Dr. Williams said gently. She's worried you might be experiencing some form of cognitive decline. What kind of recordings? Dr. Chen asked, pulling out a tablet to take notes. I could hear Victoria's footsteps upstairs, moving quickly. She'd be down in moments to witness what she thought would be my public breakdown. Doctor, I said carefully, before we discuss my mental state, I'd like you to look at something. I handed Dr. Williams a manila envelope I'd prepared the night before. Inside were photocopies of every pill Victoria had given me over the past 3 months. I'd been collecting them, storing them instead of swallowing them, building evidence. These are the medications Victoria has been administering, I explained. She claims they're supplements prescribed by you, Sarah. Dr. Williams opened the envelope and her face changed immediately. Thomas, I never prescribed any of these. Most of them aren't even supplements. Dr. Chen leaned over to examine the pills. His expression grew increasingly concerned. These are prescription medications. Lorazepam, diphenhydramine, zolpidem. In combination, they would cause exactly the symptoms Victoria described. Confusion, memory issues, motor coordination problems. That's impossible, Victoria's voice came from the stairway. She descended slowly, hair still damp, wearing a concerned expression that I now recognized as carefully rehearsed. Dad, what are you showing them? Dr. Williams held up the envelope. Victoria, did you give Thomas these medications? Those are the supplements you recommended. For his memory issues. I never recommended these. Some of these drugs require prescriptions I didn't write. The room went very quiet. Dr. Chen was staring at Victoria with open suspicion. Dr. Williams looked confused and increasingly alarmed. There must be some mistake, Victoria said, but her voice had lost its confident tone. Maybe there was a mix-up at the pharmacy. Which pharmacy? Dr. Chen asked. Victoria hesitated, the first genuine pause I'd seen from her in months. CVS on University Avenue. We can verify that easily enough, Dr. Williams said, pulling out her phone. I'll call their pharmacist right now. That won't be necessary, I said quietly. I already checked. None of these medications were prescribed for me by any doctor, but they were prescribed for someone else. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out another document, a pharmacy printout James Anderson had obtained through completely legal means. These medications were prescribed for Victoria Miller Mitchell. Same exact pills, same dosages. Obtained using her insurance, her prescription history, showing treatment for anxiety and insomnia. Dr. Chen read the pharmacy records, his expression hardening. She's been giving you her own psychiatric medications without medical supervision. The dosages she was taking personally were therapeutic. The dosages she was giving you were significant. Victoria's mask was crumbling. I was trying to help him sleep. He was so anxious after Margaret died. Lorazepam isn't a sleep aid, Dr. Williams interrupted. It's a powerful benzodiazepine. In an elderly patient, especially combined with these other drugs, it could cause severe cognitive impairment. I didn't know. You have an MBA from Harvard, I said quietly. You researched every aspect of pharmaceutical interaction before implementing this plan. The word plan hung in the air like an accusation. Dr. Chen was now looking at Victoria the way medical professionals look at potential abusers. I think we need to run some blood tests, Dr. Williams said. Thomas, when was the last time you took these medications? 3 days ago. Good. We should still be able to detect metabolites. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face went completely white. Problem? I asked. She didn't answer, but I already knew what she'd seen. James Anderson had begun his work. The Tech for Tomorrow Gala was Silicon Valley's most exclusive charity event of the year. Held at the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay, it drew 200 of the industry's most influential leaders to raise money for STEM education. The $50,000 sponsorship table was worth every penny, not for the charity angle, but for the networking opportunities. Victoria had insisted we attend together. It's important for the company's visibility, she'd explained, back when she still thought she controlled the narrative. People need to see Quantum Mind's leadership team working together. What she really meant was that people needed to see her as my obvious successor. I wore my tailored Armani tuxedo, the one Margaret had insisted I buy for our last anniversary dinner. Victoria looked stunning in a black Valentino gown and her $12,000 Hermes Kelly bag, the one with the custom interior compartments she thought I hadn't noticed. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables, dressed in white linens and gold accents. The guest list read like a who's who of tech leadership, CEOs from Google, Apple, Tesla, dozens of venture capital partners, and reporters from TechCrunch and Bloomberg. Our table was strategically positioned close enough to the stage for visibility, near enough to other industry leaders for spontaneous networking. Victoria had planned every detail meticulously. You're looking well tonight, Thomas, said Jennifer Walsh, CEO of a competing AI startup. I heard you'd been having some health challenges. Before I could respond, Victoria answered smoothly. Dad's been managing some stress since Mom passed, but he's doing much better. Aren't you, Dad? The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Every conversation followed the same pattern, Victoria positioning herself as my caretaker and interpreter, subtly reinforcing the narrative of my decline. Victoria's been such a blessing, I told Jennifer. She handles so many details I might otherwise forget. Victoria's smile was radiant. She thrived on this public validation, this demonstration of her indispensability. During the cocktail hour, I noticed Elena Rodriguez working the private catering staff. She caught my eye briefly and nodded. She was exactly where she'd promised to be. James Anderson had arranged her placement through his security consulting contacts. The evening's program included presentations from 3 major tech companies about their educational initiatives. Victoria had volunteered Quantum Mind for a brief speaking slot, another opportunity to demonstrate her leadership capability. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Victoria Miller Mitchell, VP of Strategy at Quantum Mind AI, the MC announced. Victoria approached the microphone with confidence. She was in her element, Harvard-educated, perfectly dressed, commanding an audience of industry peers. Her presentation about AI's role in personalized learning was flawless, delivered without notes. At Quantum Mind, we believe technology should enhance human potential, not replace it, she said, earning appreciative nods from the audience. That's why we're committing $2 million over 3 years to develop AI tutoring systems for underserved communities. $2 million. The commitment was news to me, but Victoria delivered it with such authority that several venture capitalists immediately approached our table during the break. Impressive presentation, said David Kim from Andreessen Horowitz. Is this part of your Series D strategy? We're exploring several exciting opportunities, Victoria replied smoothly. Thomas and I make a great team. His vision, my execution. The phrase made my skin crawl. By the time dinner was served, Victoria had positioned herself as the driving force behind every Quantum Mind innovation, with me as the emeritus founder providing historical context. The dinner wine was Dom Perignon 2012, served in Baccarat crystal glasses that caught the light beautifully. Victoria made a show of examining the vintage, demonstrating her sophistication to nearby investors. This is exquisite, she told our table companions. Thomas, you must try this. She handed me a glass with a warm smile, the picture of filial devotion. To everyone watching, she was the perfect daughter-in-law, caring for an aging founder who might not fully appreciate the wine's complexity. I excused myself for the restroom during the salad course, knowing Victoria would use my absence to further establish her authority. Through the ballroom's glass doors, I could see her leaning across the table, engaged in animated conversation with 3 venture partners. When I returned, my wine glass was exactly where I'd left it, but Elena Rodriguez was clearing empty plates from the adjacent table, close enough to our conversation to have perfect visibility. Thomas, you missed such an interesting discussion, Victoria said. We were talking about succession planning and family businesses. It's always challenging when founders need to transition leadership, agreed Martha Stevens from Sequoia Capital. The most successful transitions happen gradually, with family members stepping into larger roles. Victoria's eyes gleamed. That's exactly what we've been discussing. Thomas has such incredible wisdom, but the day-to-day operations require someone with more energy. I picked up my wine glass and took a small sip. This really is exceptional vintage, Victoria. You have excellent taste. I'm so glad you like it. Her smile was genuine. She thought her plan was proceeding perfectly. Over the next hour, as the charity auction raised money for coding boot camps and robotics programs, I could feel the medication beginning to take effect. A subtle drowsiness, a slight slurring of words, the kind of symptoms that would be attributed to age and wine rather than pharmaceutical manipulation. Victoria was brilliant in her execution. She gradually took over conversations, finishing my sentences when I paused, guiding discussions toward topics she wanted to address. To outside observers, she looked like a devoted family member, helping an older relative navigate a challenging evening. Thomas, maybe you should slow down on the wine, she whispered during the auction, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. You know how alcohol affects you differently now. The concerned trolling was masterful. Every suggestion of my frailty was delivered with love and worry, making her appear caring while reinforcing my supposed decline. By the time dessert was served, I was playing the role of confused patriarch perfectly. I stumbled slightly, getting up for the bathroom. I asked the same question twice during conversation. I let my voice trail off mid-sentence, looking momentarily lost. Victoria was radiant with success. She worked the room during coffee service, speaking with reporters about Quantum Mind's future, discussing partnership opportunities with potential clients, positioning herself as the company's voice for every substantive conversation. Your daughter-in-law is impressive, said someone behind me. I turned to see Michael Rodriguez, CEO of a major software company. She really understands the technical aspects of your platform. Victoria is remarkable, I agreed, my words slightly thick from the drugs she'd given me. So capable. So ambitious. The evening was winding down when Victoria approached the microphone for one final announcement. Before we close tonight's program, she said, I want to thank Thomas Mitchell, founder of Quantum Mind AI, for his decades of innovation and leadership. As he transitions into an advisory role, I'm honored to continue building on his incredible foundation. The applause was warm and genuine. Everyone in that room was witnessing what they believed to be a graceful succession, an aging founder passing the torch to capable family leadership. Victoria returned to our table, glowing with triumph. That went perfectly, didn't it, Dad? I nodded slowly, letting the medication show in my movements. Perfect, Victoria. Absolutely perfect. What she didn't realize was that Elena Rodriguez had documented everything. The transformation began when Dr. Sarah Williams walked into the ballroom. Victoria was accepting congratulations from a group of venture capitalists when she noticed the disruption near the entrance. Dr. Williams wasn't on the guest list, wasn't dressed for the gala, and was moving with the purposeful stride of someone on official business. "Excuse me," Victoria said to the investors. "I need to check on something." But Dr. Williams was already approaching our table, followed by two people. Victoria definitely recognized James Anderson, the private investigator I'd hired, and Detective Lisa Crawford from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. The conversations around us gradually quieted, as people sensed something significant was happening. In Silicon Valley, drama at high-profile events spread like wildfire through social media. Phones came out discreetly. Cameras began recording. "Thomas, we need to talk," Dr. Williams said, her voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet ballroom. I stood slowly, still playing the role of medicated confusion. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "We have the blood test results from this morning." Victoria's face went pale. "Blood tests? Dad, what is she talking about?" Dr. Williams opened a manila folder. Thomas's blood work shows significant levels of lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and zolpidem. Enough to cause serious cognitive impairment. The silence spread across nearby tables, like ripples in a pond. These were people who understood pharmaceutical companies, who funded medical startups, who knew the difference between prescription medications and supplements. "Those are powerful drugs," said Dr. Patterson from the Stanford Medical School table. "Not something you'd take accidentally." Victoria's Harvard training kicked in immediately. "Dr. Williams, this is hardly the appropriate venue for medical discussions. If Thomas has been taking medication—" "He hasn't been taking medication," Dr. Williams interrupted. "He's been given medication. Without prescription. Without supervision. Without consent." James Anderson stepped forward, carrying a leather portfolio that commanded immediate attention. In Silicon Valley, where NDAs and corporate espionage were constant concerns, everyone recognized the look of serious documentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anderson said, his voice cutting through the ballroom's acoustics, "I apologize for the disruption, but we have evidence of a serious crime in progress." Victoria tried to maintain control. "James, whatever you think you've found—" "We found everything, Victoria." Anderson opened his portfolio and pulled out a stack of photographs. 3 months of surveillance footage showing you tampering with Thomas's food and medication. Bank records showing unauthorized transfers totaling $340,000. Email correspondence with offshore financial services discussing asset protection strategies. The revelation hit the room like a physical force. Phones were definitely recording now. The CEO of Tesla was leaning forward to hear better. A reporter from TechCrunch was typing furiously on her phone. "This is harassment," Victoria said, but her voice cracked slightly. "Thomas, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman who had systematically poisoned me while playing the role of devoted caregiver. The medication she'd given me earlier was making me drowsy, but my mind was crystal clear. "The only misunderstanding," I said slowly, "was thinking you could get away with it." Detective Crawford moved closer to Victoria. "Ma'am, we have some questions about your financial transactions and pharmaceutical activities." "I haven't done anything wrong," Victoria protested. "Thomas has been confused lately, making accusations." "Confused because you've been drugging him," Dr. Williams stated flatly. "The blood work doesn't lie, Victoria. Neither do the prescription records showing you obtained these medications for your own anxiety treatment, then administered them to Thomas without medical supervision." The crowd was thick around us now. Martha Stevens from Sequoia Capital was recording video. The charity auction had stopped completely. Michael Rodriguez was on the phone, probably calling other industry contacts. Thomas suffers from early-stage dementia, Victoria said desperately. These accusations are part of his condition. No, said a clear voice from behind her. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, still wearing her catering uniform, but standing with the dignity of someone telling the truth. I've been watching her drug him for 2 months. Tonight she put pills in his wine glass while he was in the bathroom. Elena held up Victoria's Hermes bag, which she'd retrieved during the confusion. The pills are still in here, along with a syringe and 3 small bottles of liquid medication. The bag was opened on the table for everyone to see. Inside the custom compartments were prescription bottles, a small mortar and pestle, and what looked like a sophisticated pharmaceutical preparation kit. Victoria's mask finally shattered completely. You people have no idea what you're talking about. Thomas has been declining for months. I've been trying to help him. By stealing from his company. Anderson pulled out more documents. Bank records show systematic transfers to shell companies you established. Email threads discussing plans to have Thomas declared incompetent. Meeting notes from conversations with lawyers about conservatorship proceedings. The scope of Victoria's plan was becoming clear to everyone in the ballroom. This wasn't just elder abuse, it was corporate theft executed with the precision of an MBA-trained strategist. The most damning evidence, Anderson continued, came from Victoria herself. He pressed play on a small recording device. Victoria's voice filled the ballroom, clear and unmistakable. Maybe it's time to accept that your best days are behind you. You can't remember quarterly revenue numbers. Well, when was the last time you contributed anything meaningful to Quantum Mind? Then my voice, steady and controlled. I built that company from nothing. Victoria's response was devastating in its cruelty. 20 years ago. Technology changes. Leadership changes. The recording continued for another minute, documenting Victoria's admission of the financial transfers, her plan to have me declared incompetent, and her complete lack of remorse for systematically drugging me. The room was silent except for the sound of phones capturing every word. That recording was made illegally, Victoria said weakly. Actually, said Detective Crawford, it was made in Thomas's home office, with his consent, on his property. Perfectly legal. Dr. Williams addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the authority of medical expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing is a case of systematic elder abuse combined with corporate fraud. Thomas Mitchell has been chemically impaired for months by someone he trusted completely. The irony was perfect. Victoria had orchestrated this public event to demonstrate my incompetence and establish herself as my successor. Instead, she was being exposed as a criminal in front of the most influential audience in Silicon Valley. Marcus Thompson, my business partner of 30 years, stepped out of the crowd. Thomas, I owe you an apology. I thought you were struggling with grief. I had no idea someone was... He stopped, looking at Victoria with disgust. It's okay, Marcus, I said, my voice stronger now despite the drugs in my system. She fooled everyone. That was the point. Victoria made one last desperate attempt at control. Thomas, please. We're family. Derek will be devastated if you pursue this. Think about what this will do to our relationships. Derek doesn't know, Detective Crawford said quietly. We've been monitoring communications. Your husband had no knowledge of your activities. Victoria's final card had been played and discarded. She stood in the middle of Silicon Valley's most exclusive gala, surrounded by industry leaders, caught with physical evidence of systematic poisoning and financial theft. Victoria Miller Mitchell, Detective Crawford said formally, you're under arrest for elder abuse, pharmaceutical fraud, and corporate embezzlement. The detective's words carried clearly through the ballroom. Phones recorded every moment as handcuffs were applied to the woman who'd been giving a presentation about AI's potential just 2 hours earlier. As Victoria was escorted toward the exit, she turned back to me one last time. Thomas, you'll regret this. The company needs strong leadership. You can't run Quantum Mind forever. I looked at my daughter-in-law, this person who had violated every principle of family trust and corporate responsibility. You're right, Victoria, I said quietly. I can't run the company forever, but I can damn sure make sure you never get the chance. The ballroom erupted in conversation as Victoria disappeared through the exit doors. Reporters were calling their editors. Venture capitalists were reassessing their investment strategies. The story of the night had shifted from charity fundraising to corporate crime drama. And for the first time in 3 months, despite the drugs still affecting my system, I felt completely in control. The emergency board meeting convened at 9 a.m. sharp, the next morning in Quantum Mind's glass-walled conference room. Marcus Thompson had sent notifications to all 7 members before midnight, invoking the crisis protocols Margaret and I had established years ago. I arrived early, wearing my standard Navy suit and carrying a leather folder thick with documentation. The medication from the previous night had finally cleared my system, and my mind felt sharp for the first time in months. The board members filed in silently. Marcus Thompson, Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Stanford, 3 investor representatives, and 2 independent advisors. Their faces ranged from concerned to curious. The tech industry grapevine had been working overtime since the gala incident. "Thomas," said Richard Hayes, our lead investor representative, "we need to understand what happened last night. The videos are already going viral." "I'll explain everything," I replied, opening my folder. "But first, I want to address the elephant in the room. For the past 3 months, I've appeared to be suffering from cognitive decline. Some of you expressed concerns about my fitness to lead the company." Uncomfortable shifts around the table. Marcus looked particularly pained. He'd been questioning my capabilities for weeks. "Those concerns were justified based on observable symptoms," I continued. "Memory issues, confusion during meetings, inability to focus on complex technical discussions. What you didn't know was that these symptoms were artificially induced." I distributed copies of Dr. Williams' blood work analysis. Victoria Miller Mitchell was systematically administering prescription medications without my knowledge or consent. The cognitive impairment you witnessed was pharmaceutical, not neurological. Dr. Walsh, a neuroscientist herself, studied the lab results with growing alarm. "Thomas, these drug combinations could have caused permanent brain damage. The dosages were significant." Victoria knew exactly what she was doing. She has extensive research documentation on pharmaceutical effects in elderly patients. This was calculated, systematic, and designed to support a specific outcome. Richard Hayes leaned forward. "What outcome?" I pulled out James Anderson's investigation report. Victoria was building a case for my incompetence while positioning herself as the logical successor. The plan culminated in a competency hearing scheduled for next week, followed by a motion to transfer operational control to interim management, specifically herself. The room went very quiet. Corporate coups were nothing new in Silicon Valley, but this level of personal betrayal was extraordinary, even by industry standards. "The financial evidence is equally damning," I continued, distributing bank statements and wire transfer records. $340,000 in unauthorized transactions over 2 months, all approved during meetings I allegedly missed due to my condition. Marcus examined the financial documents, his engineer's mind quickly processing the patterns. These transactions established offshore entities and transferred intellectual property rights. She was systematically stripping company assets, while building a medical case for my removal, I confirmed. The timing was perfect. Complete the asset transfers, establish incompetence, assume control before anyone could question the missing funds. The board members exchanged glances. They were dealing with unprecedented corporate malfeasance combined with elder abuse. "What's Victoria's current status?" asked Sarah Peterson, our independent advisor. "She's been charged with elder abuse, pharmaceutical fraud, and corporate embezzlement. She's currently in county jail awaiting arraignment. Bail was set at $2 million. Richard Hayes was taking notes furiously. "Thomas, we need to address the immediate operational concerns. The Series D funding round is still pending. Investors are going to have questions." "Which is why we need to act decisively," I replied. "I'm recommending immediate termination of Victoria Miller Mitchell's employment, revocation of all access credentials, and initiation of civil recovery proceedings for the stolen funds." "Seconded," Marcus said immediately. Dr. Walsh raised her hand. "Before we vote, I need to ask, Thomas, are you medically cleared to resume full operational duties?" "Dr. Williams has provided complete medical clearance. The pharmaceutical effects were temporary. I'm cognitively unimpaired." I stood and walked to the whiteboard, quickly sketching out the algorithmic architecture for our next-generation AI platform. My hand was steady, my technical recall perfect. Our Series D presentation is scheduled for Friday. I'll be personally leading the investor meetings. The vote was unanimous. Victoria Miller Mitchell was terminated from all positions. permanently barred from company premises and subject to full asset recovery litigation. One more thing, I said as the meeting concluded. I want to establish new governance protocols to prevent this situation from recurring. Independent medical oversight for all senior executives, mandatory financial audits with external oversight, and enhanced whistleblower protections for employees who report concerns. Marcus smiled for the first time in months. The Thomas Mitchell I remember is definitely back. As board members filed out, their conversations were animated but optimistic. But mind, I would survive this crisis stronger than before. The company Margaret and I built together was safe. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. By Thursday morning, every major tech publication had covered the story. TechCrunch's headline read, "Quantum Mind founder exposes daughter-in-law's systematic poisoning scheme." Bloomberg focused on the financial angle. Tech executive charged with embezzling $340,000 while drugging company founder. Victoria Miller Mitchell's mugshot became the face of corporate family betrayal. Harvard Business School quietly removed her from their Alumni Success Stories webpage. The consulting firm where Derek worked issued a statement distancing themselves from the situation. The criminal charges were substantial. Elder abuse carried a maximum penalty of 4 years in state prison. Pharmaceutical fraud added another 3 years. Corporate embezzlement of this magnitude could result in additional federal charges. Victoria's legal team was already discussing plea bargain options. Derek returned from his business trip, which investigators discovered was actually a 2-week vacation in Tahiti, funded by the embezzled money. His shock seemed genuine when Detective Crawford showed him the evidence of his wife's activities. I knew Victoria was ambitious, Derek told me during a painful conversation in my living room. But Dad, I had no idea she was, poisoning you, stealing from the company. I feel sick. You didn't know, I confirmed. James Anderson's investigation cleared you completely. Victoria compartmentalized everything, kept you isolated from her planning. Derek was filing for divorce within the week. Their prenuptial agreement protected him from financial liability, but the emotional damage would take years to heal. The financial recovery was surprisingly successful. James Anderson's investigation had documented every transaction, making asset freezing straightforward. The Cayman Islands LLC Victoria had established contained most of the stolen funds. Her personal assets, including the $12,000 Hermes bag that had held her pharmaceutical supplies, were seized pending restitution. Quantum Mind. ATI's stock price actually increased after the news broke. Investors appreciated the decisive action and comprehensive governance reforms. The Series D funding round closed successfully, with Bayview Capital praising my remarkable resilience and strategic thinking under extremely challenging circumstances. Dr. Sarah Williams became something of a media expert on pharmaceutical elder abuse. She testified before a state Senate committee about the need for better oversight of medication management in families. Her appearance on 60 Minutes featured Victoria's case prominently. Elena Rodriguez received recognition that changed her life. The Service Workers Union presented her with their annual Courage Award. A GoFundMe campaign raised $60,000 for her children's college funds. Le Bernardin SF promoted her to catering manager and featured her story in their corporate newsletter. "You saved Thomas Mitchell's life," the union president said during the award ceremony. "But more importantly, you proved that dignity and courage exist at every level of society." Elena's acceptance speech was brief but powerful. "I just did what was right. Nobody should hurt elderly people, especially family. We all get old someday." The tech industry's response was fascinating to watch. Victoria's case became a cautionary tale in business school ethics courses. Several companies implemented new policies requiring independent medical oversight for senior executives. The phenomenon of pharmaceutical corporate abuse entered the vocabulary of corporate governance experts. Marcus Thompson and I strengthened our partnership, implementing the governance reforms I'd proposed. Board meetings now included mandatory independent observers. All financial transactions over $50,000 required dual approval. Medical evaluations for executives were conducted by randomly selected independent physicians. "You know what's remarkable," Marcus said during our first post-crisis planning session. "You turned Victoria's attempt to destroy you into an opportunity to make the company stronger." The media attention brought unexpected benefits. Harvard Business Review asked me to write an article about identifying and responding to internal corporate threats. Fortune magazine featured Quantum Mind on their cover with the headline, Resilience and Recovery, How One Founder Fought Back. But the personal cost was significant. Family dinners would never be the same. Derek and I were rebuilding our relationship slowly, but trust had been damaged. Margaret's absence felt sharper. She would have known how to heal these wounds. 3 months after the gala incident, Victoria accepted a plea bargain, 2 years in state prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution of stolen funds. Her statement to the court was brief and showed no real remorse. I believed I was acting in the best interests of the company, she said. My methods were inappropriate, but my intentions were to preserve Thomas Mitchell's legacy. The judge's response was withering. Ms. Miller Mitchell, you systematically poisoned an elderly man while stealing from his life's work. Your intentions were to enrich yourself at the expense of someone who trusted you completely. Victoria was led away in handcuffs, beginning a prison sentence that would end her career in corporate America forever. Standing outside the courthouse that day, Derek put his arm around my shoulder. Dad, I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry I wasn't here to protect you. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. The company Margaret and I built survived. Our family would too, though it looked different now. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But sometimes, if we're very lucky, we discover allies in the most unexpected places. Elena Rodriguez taught me that dignity has nothing to do with social class and everything to do with character. 6 months later, I stood in Quantum Mind's new headquarters in Palo Alto, watching Elena Rodriguez train our expanded catering staff for the company's 20th anniversary celebration. She wore a management badge now and moved with the confidence of someone whose courage had been recognized and rewarded. The anniversary event would be different from the charity gala where everything had unraveled. This celebration was about genuine achievement, not social positioning. 200 employees, their families, and key partners would gather to celebrate what we'd built together. Derek was flying in from Seattle, where he'd started a new consulting practice specializing in corporate governance. Our relationship was stronger now, built on honest communication rather than assumptions. He'd learned to ask hard questions. I'd learned to share difficult truths. Dad, the catering setup looks perfect, Derek said, joining me in the conference room. Elena's done an amazing job with the logistics. She's remarkable, I agreed. Taking initiative at the gala saved my life, but her work ethic and intelligence are what earned her this promotion. Victoria was 18 months into her prison sentence, working in the facility's library and reportedly taking correspondence courses in nonprofit management. Her lawyer had mentioned possible early release for good behavior, but she'd be permanently barred from corporate leadership positions. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Elena hadn't spoken up? Derek asked. I considered the question. Victoria would have succeeded, probably. I'd be in a memory care facility. You'd have inherited a company controlled by someone who viewed your father as an obstacle rather than a mentor. The thought was sobering. How many elderly executives had faced similar situations without allies like Elena Rodriguez and Dr. Williams? My new personal policy was simple. Trust, but verify. I maintained independent medical oversight, used external financial auditors, and created multiple channels for employees to report concerns. The governance reforms had been adopted by 3 other tech companies as industry best practices. Thomas, we're ready for your final walkthrough, Elena called from the doorway. Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd earned respect through action rather than position. As we toured the anniversary setup, I reflected on the lessons learned. Age brings vulnerability, but also perspective. Experience matters, but so does vigilance. And sometimes the most important allies are the people society teaches us to overlook. Margaret would have been proud of how we'd handled this crisis, not with bitterness or revenge, but with justice and wisdom. If you're watching this story, I hope you'll remember that dignity and courage exist at every level of society, I said to the camera recording this testimonial. And please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The future looked bright, built on stronger foundations than before.